We're on Ubuntu 10, or Maverick Meerkat, and today we want to look at some client-side mounting commands. Now the first thing I'm going to do is sudo nano, and I'm going to edit my etc host file and add a host name. And you can tell, in this case, Network Manager is running on this system. It's a laptop, and that's great. I want to use DHCP for something like a laptop, but notice how that it dynamically writes to the file as it leases an IP from DHCP. So again, we said this in other tutorials, you wouldn't want that for a static IP address for a server. You'd actually want to uninstall Network Manager. Matter of fact, I recently had an issue. I was getting a portal called, it was a free open source Perl CGI portal called Web App to run, and one of the issues in Maverick Meerkat is that this would be mapped to, the same host name or local host would be mapped to multiple IPs, like the static IP and the dynamic IP. And so the Perl script couldn't, find things properly, and it couldn't path things out properly. And the way to fix it was to pull this out of the host file and uninstall Network Manager and sort of go back to the standard way that Linux or Unix does things. But I'm going to go ahead and add, the IP address for Pegasus in here, just so we can see that you can use these commands with either an IP address or a host name. Haven't set up DNS yet. If we did, we wouldn't even have to do this, but right now we'll just use the host file. Pegasus, and doesn't really matter, it's not case sensitive, but just kind of being picky there. So I'm going to do Control X and yes to save and enter, and I just want to verify that I have saved the changes. Okay, and there's Pegasus. I'm going to verify that I can reach it by IP. Yes, and verify that I can reach it by hostname. Yes. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over and mount this. If I were to graphically mount it here in the GNOME desktop Windows environment via Samba. Now that I have a hostname mapping, I can use a hostname. So now I'm on a remote server, Pegasus, and these are directories I would have to log into to authenticate. Like here's write. Notice when I do that, Ubuntu adds a sort of a shortcut on my desktop there. Let me go into one I need to authenticate with. Let me see. How about this one here? Okay, and then because guest access is set to no here, so. But same thing. If once I authenticate and I kind of get past that, it'll mount it here as a shortcut on my desktop. And so these are actually mounted to folders. So we looked at how things are mounted locally, partitions and drives and things, and we said that everything is mounted to a folder, sort of the way things are set up under Ubuntu Linux, and for that matter also Red Hat, whether it's Debian or Red Hat Fedora. So just using the mount command, you can see what I have mounted so far. These are actual partitions on on the drives on this laptop. But these are local mounts, so we're going to use our command line tools. To get the suite of tools that we need to install SMBFS first. So I'm going to do sudo and apt-get and install and SMBFS. Which will sort of be the Samba file system utilities. Okay, and now with that installed, I can use some of these these new mount commands. Okay, with SMBFS installed, we now have several new command line tools that we can use to mount shares and directories, both with Windows and with Ubuntu or Linux over Samba. So one of the first things I want to do, remember the mount command works by sort of mounting everything to a folder. So again, we looked at this in other tutorials. Locally on the system, we mount partitions and drives to folders and things. And things will commonly be mounted to media. In this case, what's in the CD drive has been mounted to the folder media. Or if I plugged in a USB drive or a flash drive. But also things in the network need to be mounted to folders. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a folder here, and I'm in my home directory, so I'm going to say sudo. I actually don't really even need it necessarily being in my home directory, but I'll just use sudo mkdir to make a directory, and let's call it mount me, all caps. Okay. So there is mount me, and we'll use that as a folder to do our mounting too. And now I'm going to do sudo, and the first command, I'm going to use the mount command, -t to specify the type, sys, the common internet file system. This is sort of the new way to do it, or sort of the modern way. There's also SMBFS, which we'll try, but that's sort of deprecated. So we'll do this one first. 2//, the IP address or the host name of the server you want to mount. Another // the name of the share that you want to mount to. And then finally, the name of the folder that you created that you're going to mount this network share to. Now, a little bit of differences here. If this were Red Hat or Fedora, you'd need a / there. The syntax is a little different, but with Debian and Ubuntu, if you're going to use a relative path in a directory, there's no / there. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and do this, and this will ask me for whoever I've set up on that server, in this case being another Ubuntu, another Linux server with a Samba password. It's going to query me for the password. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put the password in of a Samba user account. Notice what happens here. It mounts it on my desktop, and these are, it looks like I'm listing the contents of that folder, but really I'm listing the contents of that network share. Now, I did that as root, so I don't have permission to unmount. Like if I try to unmount here, it's going to tell me, hey, you can't do that. And let's see what it looks like if I run the mount command and list my mounts. Notice here's the IP address, 192.168.13.13. Okay? So if I want to unmount it, I would simply use the umount command to unmount it, and it's just going to be the folder name. So I could use the absolute path, but I could also use the relative path of mount me. And if I do that and I run the mount command again, notice the shortcut disappeared, and notice when I run mount, it's gone. Alright, so again, let's take a look at that using the host name instead of the IP address, since we set up a host name to IP mapping. So I'm going to use sudo the mount command t. I'm going to specify sys as the file system type. This time the host name, Pegasus, the same share, and the same syntax for a relative path to the folder I made to mount it to. It's going to query me for the Samba password on that account that I'm using to authenticate on the remote server. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, and now I've authenticated, and again there it appears. Here's the folder, and if I use the mount command, notice that here it's mounted by hostname, either IP address or a hostname, but it'll be mounted here. So now I'm going to unmount it. I'm going to say umount, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the directory name. Okay, so that was sys via IP address and hostname. Now let's try the mount command using the old SMBFS system. So SMBFS, and again, I'm just, the syntax would be the same as far as specifying the server and what you want to mount to and the name of the folder that you created. And again, whoever has a Samba password account will need to authenticate on the remote server. You type that in and it's mounted. And again, you notice it's mounted, and that's what it looks like. Alright, so mounted by IP address. And I can do the same thing by hostname.